Hello everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Watercolor Wednesday. I'm Leslie Watkins. Today I wanted to paint a little picture with a bee because all of this month I'm going to be featuring bee products. So I have my stamp set here, the Honeybee Home. I also have an old stamp set. This is a retired stamp set that some of you might have called Honeybee, which you might like to use. And then I've got a special stamp set. This is called Special Moments. This is from the Celebration catalog. This is one of the items that you can get for free with a $100 order. And this is a wonderful sentiments stamp set. There are 21 different stamps in here for all these different occasions. So this is a great stamp set to have by your side when you just need to make a card very quickly for somebody, or if you need to make a lot of cards, like for an occasion. So anyway, so I've got these sets out. But what I want to do, because today is Watercolor Wednesday, is I want to create a little background. And so to do that, I've got a piece of watercolor paper here, and this measures, it's only 3 3/4 approximately by 5. And I thought what I would do is paint a little scene with a bee yard in the background and a little flower in the foreground and maybe some bees, and then leave some room for a sentiment. So I'll show you how I begin. So before I do that, I just want to check, make sure my settings are correct. That looks good. I've got my coffee. I hope you have your coffee too. And then off to the side here, I've got my watercolors. So I've got yellow, red, and blue. I'm just keeping it very simple. And I have a watercolor brush and a pencil. And I do have a couple of cups of water. These are just the pint-sized deli containers. And I have a damp sponge. So this is just a cellulose kitchen sponge that's damp but not wet. So I'm thinking of a scene with a beehive. So I'm just going to sketch in a little box here to indicate the beehive in the background. So there's my box, and I know it may not be easy to see this because I'm drawing very lightly, but I'm just sketching enough information so that I can follow it when I begin to paint. And then in the foreground here, I think I'll have a flower. So let's make it a dandelion because bees love dandelions. And in the early spring, when nothing else is blooming, the dandelions are out and they provide the bees and other pollinators with the much needed nectar that they need to survive. So if you see your dandelions on your lawn, you want to be glad that they're going to be providing nourishment for all the critters. Okay, and I think I'll put a bud. So a couple of flowers and a bud. Very simple. And my leaves down at the bottom. And I think I'll put another beehive in the background. maybe another one in the distance. Okay, and then we'll have our bee. And this month in the Watercolor Card Club, everybody's learning how to paint a bee. And how to put that bee in a little scene just like this. And I'll have some bees in the distance. Okay, and that's going to leave me a little bit of room here for my sentiment. So I'm just going to begin. Actually, I think what I want to do first is clear off a little section of my palette, because I want to put some sky in, and I want my blue to be nice and clean. So I'm just going to remove a little bit of this paint. I'm not going to take it all away because this is all still good. So I'm just going to make one little clear area. Clear area. Okay, here we go. All right, we'll have this a nice sunny day. And then a little bit of the ground plane here. Okay, so I'm just painting very quickly just to get some paint on there. Going to give the back a little bit of the spritz to help that lay flat. And now I'm going to start painting in my flower. Get some yellow. I want to make sure that the paint comes all the way to the edges on this. I'm just going to pull that around, like so. There we go. And I'm mixing up some green. And I'll start putting in these leaves. And my stems. Just give me a little spritz. And I see there's a number of people out here. Good morning, everybody. Hi, Carol and Peggy, Ginger, and Linda. Taking a little bit, I'm making a darker green mixture. I'm just going to drop that in there and let that swirl around a little bit. My painting's pretty wet right now. I think you can see that. So I want to give it a chance to settle in. And for my bee boxes or hives, I'm going to add a little bit of a tone on the shadow side. Like so. Just adding some of the details to the flowers. And start painting my bee. Very tiny. So it helps to have a brush with a nice sharp point like this one to get these little details. Okay. And I think we want to get some texture in our foreground. So I'm just going to brush in some kind of grassy strokes. Just using a little dry brush now. And add some leaves. And I think you can see that you can get quite a range of colors by just mixing your three primaries. So remember, I'm still using just red, yellow, and blue. I'm mixing all of these greens and all of the other tones that you see here with just those three colors. So if you take a minute to just practice some of your color mixtures, I think you'll be surprised at how little paint you actually need. Now the dandelion leaves have these wonderful toothy edges, which is how they get their name, the Dandelion, which is the tooth of the lion. So we can get some of that detail in there. Just picking out a few of these jagged edges here and there. There we go. And I think I want to make the, I want to add a little more blue to my sky in this corner. I want to make that a little bit darker. My beehive, and can add some detail to the hives. Bring that paint right down to the edge. So I think you can see it beginning to develop now. Got a nice crisp edge here to the corner of the beehive. There we go. And just adding a little more grassy texture in the background here. A little too wet in here to get that, but I'll come back to that in a little bit. Let's get back to the bee. I'm just going to indicate the wings. Like so. Now when it's dry, I'll be able to come in and put in the tiny little details. It's a little too damp for me to be able to do that right now. But now I'm mixing up some of a dark green, and hopefully, let's say, it's pretty wet. Well, I'm not going to be able to put in the detail right now until it dries a little bit. So all I can do at the moment is to just get it set up so that when I put the veins on the leaves and the details to the bee, like the little legs and things like that, and I'll show that to you in the finished photo. But right now I have to let this dry a little bit. So while that's drying, I'll get the rest of the cards set up. So I'm just going to put this aside. And I have my card base here. This is very vanilla. I've got a piece of bumblebee cardstock, and this layer is 4 by 5 1/4. And then when my picture is dry, I will mount it on there like that. But I want to add a sentiment. So I think I kind of like this one. Thanks for brightening up my day. So I'm going to use vellum for that. So I'm going to grab myself a piece of vellum. So here's my vellum. And the vellum, as you can see, is translucent. So you'll be able to see a little bit behind there. I'm just going to cut off a small piece here. So I'll start with a 3-inch piece. Actually, I'll start with a 2-inch piece. And for this, I'm going to do some heat embossing. Look how many sentiments you get in this set, so many. So here's the one I'm looking for. If you'd like to learn more about Celebration and how you can get this stamp set for free, I will be posting all of the links below, or you can look at one of my previous videos and see the link there that will bring you to the shop with me area. And all you have to do is select either $50 or $100 worth of product, and then you will have the option to be able to select some free stamp sets. So that is under the Celebration link, and I'll have other links below as well. So I'm just going to grab my foam pad here. Get this lined up as best I can. And I think this is probably going to have to be cut down. It's a little bit too big. I'm going to go ahead and do a second one so I have an extra one for later. That looks pretty good. All right, so my heat tool is a little bit noisy, so I'm just going to mute for a minute while I add the heat to my sentiment. There we go. So all of the tools and materials that you see me using here today will be listed below with the exception of the watercolors, but you can also do this with your reinkers. And if you'd like to learn more about that, subscribe to Notes from Dandelion Cottage and you will get the invitation to join my watercolor card club where I talk about how to paint with both ink, watercolors, watercolor pencils, so any medium that you like. So I'm going to trim this down just a tiny bit. Looks pretty good. All right, so let's just check this for size. It's a little too big, and this is still very damp. Take a little more off of my sentiment. I want to be sure that I leave room for the bee, otherwise it'll get covered up. Okay, there we go. The trimmer helps you get a perfectly square cut every single time. So if you don't have a good trimmer, I really recommend that as one of your essential tools. Okay, so that's going to come together something like that. I'll give you a close-up. All right, so I could put actually, it would look nice up there as well. So I'm going to finish this painting off camera because I need a little more time for it to dry. And then I will put the card together and I'll show you the finished card in the thumbnail. And I'm sure somebody out there is thinking, well, why don't you just use the heat tool to dry the card? And the reason I don't do that is because it disturbs the paint layer. And when you're using fine watercolors, you want the granules in the pigments to actually settle into a kind of a natural organic look. That's called granulation. And when you use your heat tool or something that blows heat over the surface of the paper, you disturb that. So for some techniques, if I'm just doing some kind of an abstract background, it may not matter. Then sure, I'll use the heat tool or hair dryer or whatever to dry the paper more quickly. But when I'm doing a picture like this, I don't want that to happen. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that gave you some ideas of how to begin a picture. And if you do decide to do that, I'd love to see what you do. So stay well, stay happy, stay creative, and I will see you next time.